Well, to one of the best people alive, from a song sort of ironically called "Worst Person Alive" to one of the best people I know, and it is Lynne Haultain, the Executive Director of the Victorian Law Foundation, in the flesh in the studio. For those who are regularly glued to this program, they would recall an attempt to talk to you a couple of weeks ago when you were still processing the impact of being in the United States for what many of us hoped was going to be the final smashing of the ceiling, the POTUS with a big, feminist sort of wraparound there with the election, as many of us hoped, of Kamala Harris as Madam President, wasn't to be. You were there, Lynne, in many capacities, but mostly sort of observing civics, observing community engagement, making that sort of comparison around we have compulsory voting here. It's not compulsory in the States, but actually there's a lot of voting that goes on in many tiers of government. You've been back for a couple of weeks.
Yep.
What's your kind of strongest reflection of some of the learnings of what you've seen over that period of time? Getting over the disappointment, but... yeah, what have you sort of carried with you since that time?
I think, bizarrely, it's a sense of, resignation, but not huge, catastrophic catatonia, bizarrely, because I kind of thought I would do that. But in the end, the people that I met and the place that I was, which was Atlanta in Georgia, which is the site of so many struggles and so many extraordinary individuals who have led the way around all sorts of civil rights campaigning. There's a spirit there which is really, really powerful. And I spent a lot of time with extraordinary young black Southern women who will rise. They will rise. And they said to me on election day, if he wins, we'll be back. But I suppose what I also reflect on is the passing of the baton, because women of my generation and our generation, Trace, are exhausted. So there isn't the bounce back. There isn't the immediate organising around a women's march on Washington. There is a great sense of introversion and a long period of reflection. And it feels to me like the US is going through their equivalent of the referendum experience for many of us, where when I stand in public places and people are passing me by, or I'm, sitting on the tram, I'm aware that 6 out of 10 of those people around me voted no. And in the US, you're aware that, 5.5%, 6% out of 10 Americans voted for Trump. So there is this reckoning with your own experience and your own perception of the world, that is not broadly shared for a huge diversity of reasons, which, some are 250 years old and some are as old as Trump's political career. But it's, I think that sense that there is a continuity here that we need to fight again, but it will be another generation that needs to pick it up. And it will be the women. It is always the women that make this happen. One of the characters that I became completely captivated with in Atlanta was a woman called Ella Baker, whom, to my great shame, I had not come across in the past. She was a community organiser in the classic American sense through the 40s and 50s and 60s of the civil rights movement. She moved to Atlanta to work with Martin Luther King Jr., and she is, with this extraordinary figure behind the charismatic leadership of the civil rights movement. And she talks a lot about the racism, but also the sexism, and particularly the sexism even in the civil rights movement. But she was, absolutely instrumental in so much of their success. And I think whether or not they're up front and candidates again or not, it will be the women who make this work. And the women who actually have to hold the line against so many of the issues.
Lynne Haultain is with us. She's the Executive Director of the Victorian Law Foundation. If you think you are familiar with her voice, it's probably because for many years Lynne was also the breakfast presenter on ABC Radio in Melbourne, one of the most successful breakfast radio hosts and highest rating breakfast radio hosts. In fact, I'm happy to correct that record.
Live big. Live broad. Broad Radio. Download the Broad Radio app now to listen.